very general question, which I believe all of us should be able to respond to. Here we are, jumpstarting a campaign on, or rather, the campaign on teachers' mental health and teachers' well-being. The question is, what's your take? Should we be talking about teachers' mental health and teacher well-being? Excuse me. So I'm going to start with our key guests. I pick one guest from Lesotho, then I'll move down I'll move to West Africa. We have two West Africa, so I'll go to Ghana and then come to George from Sierra Leone. I know he's joining us right now from the US. And then I'll come back and to Lesotho, because we have two participants from Lesotho. So I'm going to start with, Lerato Matilda. Welcome on board. Please introduce yourself briefly and in a 1 minute, tell us your thoughts about the focus of this campaign.
All right, thank you, Doc. I'm Lerato Ralibisi, a primary school teacher in Lesotho since 2005. As a teacher and a researcher as well, for me, prioritizing teachers' mental health and well-being is core to achieving the SDG 4, quality education for all. And based on I'm going to talk about my experiences as a teacher and as the member of the union in our presentation. So you just said we introduce ourselves.
Yes. So thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you and we can't wait to hear. I mean, you are actually putting on so many hats and we can't wait to hear your reflections on realities, personal illustrations or examples. As you say, you agree that indeed there is need to prioritize teachers' mental health and teachers' well-being if we are to achieve quality education, which is what SDG 4 espouses. Now, I want to move over to George. George, please introduce yourself and just give us a one-line thought about this campaign or thinking about the focus of this campaign.
Okay. From my own side, it's morning and 3 a.m. here. So I want to say good morning to all of you.
Morning
My name
to
is
George.
My name is George from Sierra Leone. And the reason why I really love the topic we're coming to discuss is because in Sierra Leone, nothing like this has ever happened. And when I was told I have to be part of this, I was so excited. So I called back home. I have to talk to people, talk to the president of Teachers Union. They could not even know if teachers have mental health issues when it comes to their behavior and all. So what they go through. So the president was so excited. He should have joined this meeting, but because of the timing between us, so he told me any other time he can come on and join the meeting. So for me, this is one of the most important parts of education. We have to cater or look after the well-being of teachers. So I believe we are on the right track and this is timely. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And I'll come back to you so that you tell us a little bit about your organization. And thank you for reaching out to key stakeholders in Sierra Leone and actually alerting them of this campaign. We believe that out of this, you're going to have something to share with them. And of course, hopefully they can then jump into the conversation and do something symbolic in terms of hosting at least one session, whether it's online or whether it's an actual school visit or school visits, just to signal that indeed this is something that is important, and perhaps beyond the campaign, there will be other conversations or reflections on what we can do to make this systemized approach. Okay, so thank you, George. So I want to come back to George is with an NGO, and as we said in our title, we're looking at NGOs, we're looking at teacher unions, and we'll be coming back to see what's going on that end. But perhaps just to bring in Letsasi, he was the first one in the house. You may have already heard about this campaign. You've already heard what other people have said, but please introduce yourself and give us your opening remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. I am Letsatsi. I think you're pronouncing the name very well, and Sibulani might be a bit of a challenge. I'm the Secretary General of Lesotho Association of Teachers. I have actually joined this forum for purposes of, having that opportunity to hear from you guys. I am not going to present anything, but of course I will have inputs here and there. But I basically joined as an invitee.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for being here and representing all the other invitees and those who will be listening to this when we share the link to the recording. Okay, on that note then, allow me to, I think I'm pronouncing your names fairly well, as you've said, but my intonation is not right. So that's something that I hope to work on as we go by. So I'm going to ask Sibabatso to make her remarks, opening remarks as one of the key speakers. Sibabatso, can you hear me? You're still muted, just in case you're speaking. Okay, just in case she's having trouble, I'll move over to Gilbert as we wait for Sibabatso to get live. Gilbert, over to you. Your thoughts, introduce yourself.
Okay, good morning to you all in Ghana, West Africa here. My name is Gilbert Kwenu. I teach at the junior high level, and I'm a local chairman of Ghana National Association of Teachers, that is NAT. Yes, and I think I'm so pleased to be part of this great program. And I think it's high time that we talk about the mental health of we the facilitators. It's very, very important. And according to the World Health Report earlier this year in June, mental health is critically important to everyone, everywhere. And all over the world, but responses are insufficient and inadequate. So I think it is very, very nice that we are having this program, that we seek to share ideas and see what we can do. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you. Indeed, mental health is a critical issue and concern across the globe, as George has rightfully pointed out. The only, I think, difference is between the players is what are we doing about it. And earlier on in one of the earlier shows, because we've had a number of shows build up to this, we had a show on 8th of October on issues related to teachers' mental health and teachers' well-being, where we had two speakers from Kenya and one from South Africa reflect on, again, this very pertinent issue. And one of the things we noted was that indeed mental health is a global issue. However, Africa is still lagging behind in terms of, one, the investment on issues related to mental health, and even in terms of the personnel that we are training, so that in some countries, we looked at data that suggested that we have one mental health practitioner for every 1 million people. However, we also were able to identify some very innovative practices in some of the countries. So indeed, it is a global issue. The other thing that we also noted is that while some countries have begun looking at issues related to teachers in terms of mental health and well-being outside Africa, there isn't as much conversation that is directly about the teachers. When you look at the research that is there, when you look at the conversations that are going on in terms of mental health within the context of the education system, a lot of the conversation is on learners and not teachers. So these are some of the things that the reality is on the ground. And I'm laying that reality as we now get into the meat of the conversation, hoping that Sibabatso, as soon as your mic is ready, just put it on and say hello, and I'll give you the opportunity to jump. There you go, there you go. Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Technology, sometimes, it gets to the best of us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Sibabatso Ntlabile. I work for the Lesotho Council of NGOs, but I come from a psychology background. So whenever we're talking about mental health, I'm always intrigued, and with the work that I do for the Lesotho Council of NGOs, where I'm not only working with health sphere, but I'm also working with within the education sphere and working a lot with teachers and teacher unions. I felt that I should partake in this. So I'm happy to see some of my people here who are joining in this beautiful conversation that we'll be having. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibabatso. And I think I'm not going to allow you to drink water because, as you said, you are in this space putting on so many different hats. You are you are working with teachers, you're working with the NGOs, of course, you interface with the teacher unions, but you're also an expert. So perhaps to help us contextualize our conversation, could you please take a minute or two to just highlight, if you're explaining it to the young person in the school today, and you're trying to make them understand, when we say mental health, what are we talking about? And when we say well-being, what are we talking about? So that we just have a sense of a framework within which we can now place our next phase of conversation. You're muted, Sibabatso.
Can I be heard?
Yes, now you can be heard.
Okay, apologies. I sometimes use mental health and well-being interchangeably, because in the way we are as human beings, or in the way we are in the work that we do, we cannot run away from using these words interchangeably, because mental health is the overall being. We're looking at the spiritual well-being of the individual, the psychological well-being of the person, the actual physical health of the individual, it being a teacher, being a child, or any person really. So I use them interchangeably in that sense, because I find that most of the time, most people, when they talk about well-being, they only talk about the physical aspect without understanding that there is the human being in totality needs to be looked at. I was going to say it in Sesotho. Now I need to get the English words. You need to look at, like I'm saying, spiritually, psychologically, physically, environmental, actually. That's that encompassing of what I say is interchangeable words of mental and mental well-being and well-being. So that's how I look at it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sibabatso. So actually, you brought out some of the things that we have been considering, because one of the things that we said was that sometimes when we say mental health, culturally, what comes into our mind, first and foremost, is the extreme. We think about, I always use this statement, the mad, a person maybe walking around talking to himself or herself, not dressed very well. But I think, as you were saying, first of all, looking at issues related to mental health, before we come to the point where you could actually say you are mentally ill. Generally, we're talking about the issues related to psychology, our emotions, how we're thinking, what's going on in our mind, and how this connects to how we feel, how we act, and how we think, and how we respond to situations and circumstances that we find ourselves in, whether it's the daily stresses of our life, because the stresses will always be there. But the state of our mental health will determine how we respond to some of the pressures around us. And then as you brought it in terms of well-being, I was looking at the World Health Organization definition of well-being. And you're right, there is that emphasis that it should be holistic. It is about physical health, it's about mental health, but it's also about social health. And in the last webinar that we had with the teachers, when we were looking at issues related to well-being, the facilitator shared with us a very simple framework for where one can actually do, quote unquote, the assessment. And this is something she uses with the teachers and the educators in her part of the world. And she calls it a well-being reckoner, and it has 8 different parts. Number 1 is the intellectual part, talking about the aspect of our creativity and the sense of there's opportunity to expand ability and knowledge. The second part was encompassing aspects related to physical health. And so there are 3 elements in it. The state of my physical health, actually 4, how much sleep one is getting, nutrition and diet and nutrition. And within physical health, she also talked about the state of physical activity. So this is actually like, she presented it like a graph. So each one of that has a line, and one can be able to map themselves and say, okay, from 0 to 10, in terms of sleep, I'm at 3 or I'm at 7. In terms of physical exercise, physical activity, I think I'm at 4. Okay, the third part of well-being that she talked about was environmental, as you say. What opportunity exists for one to just engage with their environment and get a sense of stimulation and a sense of activation, just being able to spend time in a space, whether it is in the open space, within green or whatever it is that stimulates us. So the issues of environment came in. And then, if I remember well, she talked about issues of social, the sense of social connection and the sense of a sense of belonging. Then she talked about financial, and within financial, she talked about the sense of financial satisfaction currently and financial satisfaction in the future. She talked about emotional aspect. How well am I emotionally coping, given in terms of the pressures and the realities that I'm facing? But she also talked about the issues of relationship. So anyway, it's a very simple tool, but I think it became very helpful in trying to actually, one can use it to map their well-being. But as you say, in it all, it's about having a holistic perspective, as Lerato is presenting. So now that we have kind of broken down what we mean by mental health and what we mean by well-being and how these two are actually interconnected, I think we can go into the meat of the conversation. And I know they're not represented in the House, but because normally we work under the statutes of the government, I want us to reflect just very briefly. We have Ghana and we have Lesotho. So I'll start with Lerato because she is a teacher. And of course, George here is also a teacher from Ghana. When you look at your specific government or your government, what's your take in terms of the efforts that are currently in place in terms of taking care of teachers, mental health, and well-being? Let's start with Lesotho and then we'll come to Ghana. What's going on well? What's going on well? Because we also want to see if there are best practices that we can borrow and learn from each other, or if there are innovations that are already going on in our countries that we can borrow and carry to our countries, even as we engage in this conversation. So Lerato, how well is the Lesotho government taking care of your mental health and well-being? What are the things that are actually in place for that to happen?
Thank you, Doc. At the moment, I would say we have the unit that is responsible to provide teachers with the psychosocial support. But the challenge is not all the people know that they have access to that psychosocial support from the ministry. The second one is that there are very few people in the ministry who provide that support, and they have other errands to run during the week. So you don't always have access to them. Yes.
Okay, maybe just to try and dig that a little bit. So you're saying there's a unit. Where is this unit actually placed? Where are these people actually located? Is it decentralized into different regions in Lesotho? Is it centralized? What is the current situation?
I suppose so, because I'm a teacher in Maseru, so I know of those that are in Maseru. I can't guarantee in other districts, but based on the structure of how they work in the district, it is what should be done in other districts. So we have 10 district education centers. So we have, based on Maseru, we have that facility in Maseru, and we also have the one in Central region.
Okay.
Although it's
so we have a
in
centralized system.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Let's compare with Ghana. Ghana, what's going on? What has the government put in place in terms of taking care of teachers' mental health and well-being?
Well, for now, since I'm a part of a union, that's Ghana National Association of Teachers, I think I will shed little light on what my union is doing, actually.
Sorry, before we go to the union, I know, sorry, Gilbert, I'm going to come back to the union. I want us to reflect on the government. Are there structured things that the Ministry of Education of Ghana has put in place to take care of teachers' mental health and well-being?
Yes, I think they set up those things, but then they are not in all the regions. As Lerato said, in district here, ours is regions, but then we have special schools for those things. Yes, that will take care of teachers and then all those things. But then let me go back to my union. We have a big hospital in the capital, that's Accra. We started from, in fact, we started as how do I put it? There's this hospital in Accra. In fact, it used to be a Swedish company, a hospital, but then the NATS or my union decided to go there, and then we were able to convince them. So we packaged the hospital. In fact, it's a cancer hospital. It's a hospital for cancer patients. But then, but just last December, we had the National Cancer Unit, and then we decided to generalize it. As we move from cancer patients to normal general illnesses. And also within the NAT, we have special treatment diseases that if you write to the union, we can meet you halfway. But we are still, a whole lot of things is in the pipeline. We are still doing it. The country is doing its part. The government is doing its part. We, the unions, we're also doing our part for our colleague teachers in the various regions and the towns. So I can boldly say that we have a hospital for cancer patients that take care of the teacher, the spouses, and in fact the close family. And then we are going to expand it, generalize it, to take care of all illnesses. So after this webinar, definitely we'll go to the council meeting. I'll just put it across that this is one of the issues that we need to take care of, because our mental health and well-being is very, very important. Very, very important. And because of that, last year, World Teachers Day, I did a program for my teachers in my local. Yes, I went to the mental hospital in Cape Coast here. That's in the central region, which was very, very marvelous. We had a very good discussion to the extent that the mental health issue that we were trying to discuss turned to marriage counseling meeting. Some of the teachers came out with some of the experiences, the challenges that they go through in their various homes. That also transcends into the classroom. And it's all affects teaching and learning and all those things. So I've decided that next year, God willing, I'm going to organize a very big one to for all the teachers in the Central Region. So I've told my council leaders that this is what we want to do. So I know if I send those one, we'll chip in all those mental health and well-being into the hospital so that we have psychologists and all those psychiatric people over there. Yes. And to chip in last one, let me chip in last one. I've proposed that at least for every 3 months, teachers should have at least a sheet or whatever so that we can go to the mental hospital, or the nurses or the doctors can come to the schools and check our mental states, whether we are normal. At times, stress alone can even just bring us down, all these things. So I'll come again. Yeah, I think I'm done for that.
Yeah, so this is very, very interesting that you bring this, because in your presentation, one of the things that has really come out is the effort, and I would like to applaud you for the effort that you guys have done. You're talking about a hospital where teachers can access medical services, and you're saying that one of the things you want to see happening is that within that hospital, issues related to mental health is also a focus. So that teachers can access that. And this brings us to something that has been part of the conversation going on back and forth. And I want to come back to Sebabato, because again, as we talk about mental health and as we talk about well-being, there is a continuum, there is a journey that one moves through when we're talking about issues related to mental health, that we need to really find a way of creating awareness, understanding, and conversation early enough to help us differentiate or engage with aspects that are at the lower continuum of mental health, really, that is not at the point of mental illness. And of course, you've talked about the issues of conversation. So I want to come back to Sebabato as you reinforce this thinking about mental health vis-a-vis mental illness, and you think about the structures in place. What's your reflection about what governments are doing? Because you work with a council of NGOs, but you also interface with council of NGOs from other parts of the continent. So I want us, as we come towards thinking a little bit more about what governments are doing, before we push us into the NGOs, what's your reflection about what's already in place and what could be in place? And just to expand that scope of health, mental illness, and of course, well-being, key components of well-being.
Okay, I'll say this, looking at the African context as a whole, there's still a misunderstanding of what mental illness and what mental health is. Mental illness is a clinical diagnosis. From the child, it could be like your ADHD. In adulthood, it can be your bipolars, your schizophrenia, and the likes. But mental health, we are talking, like we said, holistically. If a child's environment is not welcoming, the child is not able to grow the way they're supposed to, that affects their mental health. If you're a teacher, financially you're not able to sustain the work that you love to do, or the work environment is not inviting, then that affects you holistically in being able to do the job and being able to pass knowledge to the next generation. So I find that South Africa is one place where you see that they're trying to put mental health steps within the school environment, or the education environment rather. But in Lesotho, as much as Lerato has said, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, because the department is there, but you find that they're not, it's more centralized. It's not able to reach all the districts. So when they need to go to another district, you'll find that the government is not really giving them the means to go support the school or that district. They don't have transport, they don't have accommodation and stuff like that. So it's, I can say there is something there, but it's not where it needs to be. And also, whenever there's somebody who has a mental health issue in this country, I will talk of Lesotho, they're taken to the the mental illness hospital, and then they're given medication, and which is not what they need. They normally need counseling, they need that social work support, they need to be understood as opposed to be medicated. So Lesotho, I always say, is a clinical country where they impose medication before they give social assistance or social support or psychological support for those that are in need. So even the burnouts that are around when it comes to the teacher fraternity, you'll find that they don't get the support that they need. They can go to CSOs, which are offering counseling here and there, but not anything extensive that we can say the government or the Ministry of Education is giving, that there's no burnout that we see amongst the teachers. So, or even diagnoses for children, you don't see that happening unless it's a child with a physical disability. It takes time for them to be assessed and diagnosed, and sometimes you find that interrupts their education. I'll submit for now.
Thank you, Lerato. You brought in a number of key issues. One, our thinking about mental health and appreciating that we do not have to wait until it's a point of illness. Actually, the conversation of mental health, all of us, sometimes, I mean, we are at different levels. Maybe my sense of coping with stress. We all, for example, are faced with stressful situations. Teachers work under very rigorous environment. Sometimes the school hours, the number of students, how much work they have to do, the situations that the children themselves come home with. Now, how well I'm able to cope with this emotionally every day is something that is critical to my mental health, and also is an indicator of the state of my mental health. We could be two teachers in the same school interacting with the same pressures, but perhaps I am seen to be the one that tends to lose temper, the one that tends to, to maybe shout out at the teachers or at the fellow students because of the pressures. And that's an indication that, yes, I need support, I need help, or there's something I need to work on to help me deal with that. And we need to identify what those things are. But as you say, the structures that are in place, how accessible are they? Accessible, not just in terms of distance, but in terms of me as a teacher coming in and feeling comfortable to be part of it. But how close to the teacher should it be? I want to go to George. One of the reasons I connected with George is that they have an organization in Sierra Leone that is working on a number of areas. And one of the things that at least I saw in their Twitter feed was that they're doing some aspects to do with mental health, though not with teachers. So as we think about teachers and as we think about government and we step into NGOs, we have a number of civil society organizations, not just working within the NGO sector, but actually within education. What's your reflection if tomorrow you were to go to Sierra Leone, you just say that, there's nothing much going on issues related to mental health? Okay. What would be your take on this as an action point? Okay, so first of all, I am the CEO and founder of the West Africa Women and Girls Empowerment, Sierra Leone. And West Africa Women and Girls Empowerment is a humanitarian organization that was formed in 2012. Our main focus is, of course, we are talking about mental health here. We promote mental health. We make provision for quality girls' education.
And also we promote sexual and reproductive health education, especially with an special emphasis on HIV and AIDS. We do a lot. We talk about water and sanitation, drugs, abuse, domestic violence, climate change. So my take on this is, for me in my country, you will come to know that we don't even have statistic of people affected with mental health since 1991. So after the war, we are not able to really capture any details about mental health happening in Sierra Leone. So it is just now the new government of President Bio have given directive that Sierra Leone should have a mental health directorate. But even with that, there's no focus on the teachers. The focus is on the individuals and school-going children. So for me, this is a very big idea, which I have gathered a lot of information. We'll be organizing a symposium by next year from what I have learned previously from you, Doctor. And we have talked about also the financial stability of a teacher. Imagine if a teacher in my country is paid less than $50, we can say so. And that teacher have children, family to feed, and they are paying him less than $50. So for him to cope up with his daily life, daily activities, taking care of our kids at home, also he has another dependent that depends on him. All that boils down to his mental health, thinking of how he or she will be able to meet with his or her responsibility at home. So where can he get the money to really take care of all of those problems we'll be facing at home? When we talk about health, the school fees, though for now in Sierra Leone, the president have made it clear that from primary, from nursery to senior secondary school, you don't pay school fees, which is very good. That can help them also, help teachers. So for me as an organization, from the day you spoke to me, I have put my team together. We have to bring up a stakeholder meeting, which is a symposium. We bring all stakeholders who are involved in the government and also community stakeholders. We have the chiefs, we have paramount chiefs, we have also religious leaders. We have to talk about this issue. We find a way how really we can look into the mental health of teachers, the well-being of teachers. Because if not, how will they be teaching our children? What can they offer? What can they give to them when they will be thinking we have to get money to take care of family issues at home? So in Sierra Leone, like you said, what we are going to do is to bring these stakeholders together, if possible, even bring, because I have a good relationship with the Minister of Education, which is really, the Minister of Education is the one that is in charge of every health problems in Sierra Leone. I've approached them once to talk about mental, so that we can have a symposium or a conference, West African conference on mental health issues, dealing more with children. Of course, children also undergo a lot of mental stress. So he gave me his word, but with this now, I have learned a lot here also that, and we all know mental health in Africa in general. What we think about when they talk about someone is mentally ill, what we think about is a witchcraft or a demons. So if we cannot talk about this, if the awareness is not there as an NGO, if we cannot go out and tell people to know that mental health does not just mean being on the street, wearing tear cloth, going up and down talking, but it also affects your behavior. It also affects how you treat others. it also affects your thinking, because the way you think about things around you can affect someone in your community. So we have to go out, and like I said, we have to go out and raise more awareness and break the silence. Because for me in Sierra Leone, there are a lot of, I have seen a lot of people who says they are talking about mental health issue, but they only talk about mental health issue when the time to celebrate mental health is around the corner. An that, nobody will talk about it anymore. So I believe bringing on the teachers now on board, I believe it will make an impact, and it will bring change within the space of talking about mental health, especially with emphasis on education. That can help our children in school, because sometimes a teacher can just got angry for, like you could say, for nothing. But if you read along the line, like you said, what happens to them having, if they do not have money to take care of their family, they will bring that, in the morning, they will bring that into the school, thinking of what they will do. And there will be a child who will be just doing whatsoever that is not pertaining the schoolwork. They will automatically get angry and annoyed about what the child is doing. But if we are able to really send out the information, we raise the awareness, make sure they know that these are the issue that happens to you. And the second speaker said, no, George from Ghana said, if the government can also provide a way wherein the teachers can go out and do checkups on their physical, social health, to know what really is happening with them, or if they can have counseling, because teachers also need counseling. If they do not have counseling from the specialists that have gone through mental health programs, believe me, I'm talking about my country, because that is what I know about my country. We will not get to where we are. So for me, I will raise more awareness. We'll do radio talk shows. We'll do online programs, symposiums. We'll do in-person symposiums by next year, which we are working on our own activity plan in line with what I'm going to learn here today, because for me, it's a learning process, what is happening now. So also, there was a time I said,
George, I want to come back to you, George. Okay. I want to come back to you just so that we can find time to reflect on some of these very pertinent things that you're talking about. You're really amplifying that the issues of awareness is really important. And you're saying, which is true and critical, that awareness should happen at all levels, with the teachers themselves, with the government, with the religious leaders, because we live within our community. So I just want us to let that sink in and percolate. And I think what is very exciting is that listening to you, listening to our colleague from Ghana, there's already a sense of inspiration that is settling in our hearts out of the little conversations that are currently going on in this campaign, that is pushing us to think of what can we do and actually identify the things that we can do. I hope you can hear me. It's starting to rain here and it's going to be a little noisy, but I hope we can still continue. And you talked about, that conversation needs to happen through different forums, whether it's a symposium, whether we can look for opportunities to hold these conversations on media platforms, both traditional and online. And the learning that is going on from different countries, that is the thrust of this campaign, is the thrust of EduTalk Africa Radio.
Okay.
So I want to pass the mic to Letsasi, who is here as a person within the union, but of course, therefore, interfaces very closely with the government. I want us to close down on the government and come back to the teacher unions and the teacher themselves. So I'm coming to you, Lerato. Please be ready. I want to come to Letsasi, then I'll come back to you, George. So Letsasi, your comment.
No, thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief. First of all, the subject matter is very, very important, and it is close to our hearts as unions. Now, and my apologies for my voice. It is somehow very hoarse. Now, for me, I heard what Lerato has said as well as Sibabatso. Yeah, but for me, for us to say government has a role or a deliberate role in addressing mental health and well-being of teachers, it then talks to the policy, whether government has got a policy on the subject matter, so that whatever programs that government decides to implement, they stem from the policy. In other words, it is a deliberate national undertaking. So as far as I know, we don't have a policy that talks to mental health and well-being in Lesotho. And that creates a serious challenge, because then it says you won't have even legal instruments that as unions you can use when government does not necessarily implement. So it's therefore very important to have a policy in place. Now, when you have a policy, the programs then will be obviously communicated to teachers. I have a colleague of mine who has joined us in this group, rather in this seminar. She says, I'm interested in knowing the place where this unit is found. For me, it sends a message that because this was not a deliberate undertaking by government, even teachers don't know where the unit is. And therefore, one would say, if the unit is there, it does not serve the purpose that it is meant for. And if it is there, it was not a deliberate undertaking, in my view. So that's why even when someone has even gone to an extent of mental illness, you don't see government, prioritizing a teacher. Even when you go to hospitals, you find that there are long queues, but you won't find any priority given to a teacher associated with the work that they do at school. So for me, we are still behind as Lesotho. We do have, that unit, of course, but as to whether it serves the purpose, that leaves much to be desired. Now, what remains is what are unions doing in terms of advocacy and in terms of their programs meant to address this when governments are not saying anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very great assertion there. Policy from the government. And so one of the things we need to be interrogating, sorry, I need to put on my light because it's like I'm talking like a ghost. Give me 1 minute. Sorry. So one of the things we should be interrogating as a continent is a policy evaluation and find out which African governments in their Ministry of Education have a very, very well-defined policy that is being, and then how successful are they in implementing it in terms of supporting their teachers' mental health and well-being. So that's one of the things that's coming out of your assertion, Mr. Lesasi, that we need to go back into the instruments. We need to evaluate. And what you're saying is that you think there is a gap there. In fact, one of the shows that we'll be having next weekend will be on issues related to research and policy, where what is the situation currently? How much research are we doing? What are the key research findings on issues related to teacher education? But also, what are the policies in place and what are the policies saying in different countries? So that's really, really critical, because you're saying, and that sense of implementation and prioritization. So to what extent are people thinking about the specific challenges that come, or realities that come with teaching, and how it may affect the teacher's mental health and well-being? And then what are we doing about it? So that's something that really critical for us to take home and think about and advocate, or at least find out to inform the advocacy that we are all going to engage in, not just during the campaign, but post the campaign, because the campaign was just to catalyze the thinking about this. And then we sit back and say, okay, what should we do in our individual countries? So real great assertion there, Mr. Letsasian. Thank you for that input. I want to go back to the teacher, Lerato and George, and of course, there may be other teachers, but I want to go back to Lerato. Now, George from Sierra Leone and all of us have talked about the specific context. You know, we teach, the number of hours we teach, the number of students we teach, our salaries. These are whole other cans that have to be opened, and they all have a direct connection to the state of our mental health and well-being. They have a possible impact, negatively or positively. And some of these things will take a long time to change. The issue of teacher salary is a big conversation across the continent, across the world. And it's obviously something that all governments must continue to work to the extent that they can to continue improving. But now I want us to think about their status quo, because I think whenever we're thinking about solutions, we have to really be realistic. So I want us to think about the current situation. The salary is not that good. I'm teaching so many students. I'm going to school maybe for so many hours. Of course, it varies across the continent. But even with those realities, Lerato, what are some of the practical things you think we could do better? And I want you to think about I want you to think about the government. I want you to think about the NGOs that are working with you. But I also want you to think about the teacher fraternity and of course the teacher union. What could we do to help us handle better our mental health under the current circumstances, even if our salary does not change, for example?
Okay, thank you. As you have already indicated that teachers' mental health and well-being is pivotal for education in general, or for better achievement in students. It's unfortunate that our school management systems do not accommodate or do not provide for such, which puts teachers, or it exposes them to more stressors in dealing with their work-related pressures.
Mm-hmm.
There are no avenues to alleviate mental issues encountered by teachers, actually. So I want to give you the example of the area where I work.
Mm-hmm.
In trying to deal with this, we have come together. It's true that we have got the sponsor, but not the government sponsorship. We are together as 5 schools.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we talk of teachers, we have 2 categories: those who
Mm-hmm.
are leading, called the principals, and the ordinary teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And you find in most cases that we take out our stress to our leaders, to our children, or the students themselves. So in this cluster, teachers have time to come together and discuss different issues based on their respective projects. And the principals as well have got that opportunity to share their stress. And for me, I think that has relieved them somehow, because they have that moment where you share the skills and knowledge with other people, and then you see how they handle the challenge that you may be facing, maybe towards the better if you are unable to address it. So teachers are not only challenged by their work per se, they are also human. They have families and relatives and the likes. So when they come to school, this impact negatively on learners. So it is quite important to deal with their well-being and their mental health. So when it comes to the unions, you talked of finances, you talked of our salaries, our little salaries, if you may call it. The union that I fall under has realized that teachers are many in the country, and most of them rely on loans. So we have decided to come up with what we call the microfinancing. This will benefit teachers in that you take the loan at less rates from the union, and you are the shareholder for that particular business. So even if you are borrowing money, you're going to pay less. But it has started. We have not yet we are not that well established. But that is just a leg in helping them with regard to their finances. So apart from that, the union has made agreements with some people who will, the councillors, to provide teachers with counseling at a very low cost compared to what ordinary people pay. So that is a kind of support they are providing. And if we also have some issues at work that legal intervention, we have access to that from the union. Apart from that, because most of these are caused by how we relate with our environment and our colleagues. In some events that we have as the union, that is where we share information to the members on how they can communicate, how they can negotiate, just to help them handle their issues in a productive manner. Thank you.
Wow, so much seems to be going on the right direction in Lesotho from what Lerato is talking about. Just the appreciation that, this mental health for teachers is important. One, because they're human beings, and it, of course, it impacts the quality of education, but it also impacts their families. I always give this example. My mother is a teacher. She's a retired teacher now. And when we were growing up, every time my mom would be coming home, we would all be running to make sure everything is in place. Because if she found something not in place, she was very irritable. And now when I think about it, I think about the fact, now when I look at it, many years down the line, I actually see it was a situation of mental health. I mean, the stresses of life. It was an aspect of, coping with the emotions and the stresses that she was going through. She had children she was taking care of. Of course, the salary was not good enough. She used to walk 2 hours to school and 2 hours back. And so by the time she got home, she was fairly irritable. And so I was a firstborn, we always had to make sure everything is in place so that you don't get a slap that you are not supposed to get. So just a very practical example that when these stressors are not dealt with, they actually impact on, as George was saying, how the teacher might react to a situation in class, but it also bleeds back to home, and it could affect the social connections, the relationships, and then it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle. So really, really important. And I like what you're talking about the practical things that need to happen and which you are doing, at least to some scale, appreciating that the school culture has the potential of impacting on teachers' mental health. The relationship between the teachers themselves, but also with the leadership, is really critical in determining the fostering of positive mental health and well-being. And I like what you're saying, that you have opportunity to meet together and actually engage with fellow teachers and the principals, share knowledge and learn from one another. The counseling, and I'll be coming back to some of the things you've said, Lerato, but I want to talk about this issue of counseling. When the Zambian representative made a presentation, there was a lot about teacher counselors. But then there was a concern that they will counsel students. Who is supposed to counsel the teachers? How can we create an environment where teachers can easily, safe and accessible counseling services? And I think you are intimating to that. And please, those of us who are joining in as listeners, this is our conversation. Jump in, put your hand up at any one point, send in some text. It would really be great for you to jump in from your own personal experience. So I want to go to George, if he's still online. I know he was in class, and so he could not join us, but I can see he's still in. George, before we go to the hospital, or even as we think about the hospital, mental illness, before that, there is the reality of the everyday stress. And Lerato has talked about some of the things that are in place to try and deal with the issues of the financial stressors. So they have a teacher's circle. They have meetups together to have conversations and share experiences. She's talked about counselors. What's going on in Ghana? What are some of the things that are going on or could be in place to better support teacher mental health? I know you had already started talking about this, but perhaps you could just pick one or two that you want to amplify further. Gilbert, actually, I'm talking to Gilbert from Ghana.
Yeah, it's Gilbert, not George. Okay, so I agree 100% with Mr. Lesiati. Am I right?
Yes, you can be heard.
He did hit the nail right on the head. You see, the thing is, governments have their policies. So if you need something or you want something and you know it's not in their policy, use yourself, start doing something. So I think that's what our union started doing. We came up with a hospital for only teachers and their close relatives. Just the last council meeting, we realized that no, we need to expand the illnesses. We have diabetes, we have heart-related problems. So definitely, as I said earlier on, I will make sure we deal with mental health and then our well-being also. As one of my sisters said in Lesotho, we also have this mutual fund thing that at least distresses a bit. Teachers, we can go in for loans, and at the same time, we are shareholders. We also have this credit more that normally comes around schools, class of schools, every 3 to 6 months. They have goods, appliances that can be given to teachers. In doing all these things to at least release some of the stress, the mental stress that we go through. We also have lawyers care of some issues relating to human rights abuse and all those things. And then some of the things that we also do to normally when there's time for promotion, you need to go out for some classes. Because you're going to write some exams, you're going for interview. So now we have this preparatory classes. So if you are due to
Sorry, Gilbert, have we lost you? So we seem to, we'll come back to Gilbert. As soon as you're back, please let us know. But I just want to read some of the things that we're having here. I hope I can pronounce the name well. Mabokang says, well said, Mr. Sigolane. As far as the local scenario and context is concerned, I believe responding to the issues related to policy. And of course, as Bebatso had added voice to say that the current unit or to provide psychological support is still a very small section outside the ministry offices and also in terms of distance, as she says, on the other side of town. So she's perhaps trying to give person direction, a person who had asked and said, how can I access this? So we have maybe another 20 minutes as we move towards closing. And I hope, for me, I'm feeling very, very inspired as we have these conversations. I'm hearing about what is already in place. And I believe there's opportunity to cross-pollinate, but I'm also hearing about things that we feel are determined to do in the to contribute to improving the situation and or the reality around teachers' mental health. And I think one of the biggest thing is awareness. Awareness. Do we as teachers understand what mental health is, the components of well-being? Do we understand that? Do we have a clear understanding for ourselves? Can I, as a teacher, actually identify, and that's what I want to come back to, what can I, there's an aspect of well-being, there's an aspect of self-care. What are some of the innovative, low fruits, easily accessible? If now we were going into a brainstorming session and we're thinking of practical ideas that we can infuse in our day-to-day practice in our schools or in our towns, that involves the teacher, puts the teacher at the forefront, not somebody else coming, but the teacher at the forefront. What are some of those practical things that we could actually build into our programs, build in the teacher's understanding, that could actually position us as teachers to lean towards better mental health and better well-being, and in this case, aspects of self-care. Because one of the things that has been said about teachers is that we tend to give so much to everybody. We want to take care of everybody. But there has been this concern that teachers then do not stop to think about taking care of themselves. So I want George, as we come round, and of course, Lerato, you are also the teacher in the house. Is there enough agency? Can we build enough sense of agency in our teachers to be more conscious? What thoughts are going on in your mind? What are you hearing? And what do you think are some of the things we could actually think about in our different spaces, or even promote for our teachers in the continent to consider? George, are you still here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
So we spoke about policy evaluations. You talk,
Mm-hmm.
the one you talk about, we have to do a research on that. So it's better we engage the government to put policies in place
Mm-hmm.
that can protect these teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good also for us to raise more awareness
Mm-hmm.
on the issue around teachers' mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought of an idea wherein we can bring teachers into a one room to discuss, make them know that they also go through mental issues, because all we are talking about here is for them to really understand what is happening to them, to their well-being. So if we want to start to really talk about this, I believe we need to bring them into a place where we'll be able to talk physically in person. We can do the conversation together, not just us. I believe this can help this movement to be a successful one. And there's still an emphasis on these policies, because in my country, like I said, it's just now the president have given an order for us to have a mental health directorate in Sierra Leone since 1961, after independence. So I believe it's important. It's not just having this directorate, but we need to put these policies in place that look after the teachers and their well-being. And George from Ghana just spoke about them. He spoke about the mental problem teachers got from not having financial support, and it's also telling on their human rights. We have to look also into that, because there are a lot of time teachers spend more time in school, and this time is not being paid for. So if we look at all of those things, those problems, I believe we'll be able to come out with a solution. And for me, for now, like you said, we need to raise more awareness. So the only way we can raise the awareness, we engage the government, we engage the teachers, bring them into a whole group, an symposium, or we can call it a workshop, tell them about their mental health. In doing that, we'll be able to bring the government into that conversation. So I believe we take it from there, it will be a plus on our side.
Thank you, George. And I can see Sebabatso has some very interesting thoughts about this. And I want her to amplify that. As she does that, I just want to share my screen here. I hope you can see my screen before Sebabatso jumps in, because what she's saying is really critical. Because part of what we are pushing for in this campaign is that, yes, all the different players need to know what they can do to improve, to promote this. And so right now we're talking about teacher unions, and we hope that by having this conversation, sharing this with the teacher unions and the non-governmental organizations in education, that they can sit and reflect and say, what can I do better? How can I mainstream this in the programs and the activities? But we believe also very, very much that the solution is working with the teachers, that the teachers themselves have to be at the center of trying to take better care of themselves, given the circumstances that they're working. So anyway, I'm just sharing something. Please confirm to me that you can see my screen. I hope you can see my screen. It's a very sketchy diagram, but this is the tool. This is the tool we were talking about. And on Saturday, when we had a virtual work session, we worked together in our houses, and people joined, and we were sweating by the end of it. And we were saying, you see, sometimes as teachers, you don't have time to go out and do serious sports and everything, but something like this, you can actually do at home. Now, anyway, this tool was shared with us by the facilitator from the UK, and she calls it a mental health reckoner. And it's basically a tool that an individual can take and just try to find out, how am I doing? Actually, a well-being reckoner. How am I doing in the different aspects? So I did this for myself, and this is the diagram that I ended up. So I looked at number one, there was intellectual opportunity to my creative abilities, expand knowledge and skills. Is there room and space, like Lerato was saying, for conversations, interaction that allows me as a teacher to grow? And I rated myself fairly well. There was the issue of physical health. Where am I in terms of my physical health? Are there things that I'm concerned about? I rated myself out of 10. There's the issue of diet and nutrition. In some places, they say teachers are so busy that even lunch hour, they hardly have time to sit down and eat. And then maybe when they go home, they're thinking about marking and everything. So they're not even sitting down to enjoy whatever food it is that they're taking. And then there's the issue of sleep and physical activity. And you can see for me, I rated myself in terms of physical activity quite low. And this could be the case with many teachers. You're in school throughout. Environment, interacting with my environment, occupational enrichment and satisfaction, spiritual nourishment and sense of purpose, social connection and a support system. Lerato talked about creating a support system around themselves as teachers. And then the issues of finances. And I think teacher unions, how do we do this? Yes, the money is not enough, but what are some of the additional things we could do to help our teachers be, like in this case, financial satisfaction now and in the future? Perhaps aspects to do with financial literacy. But I think even more concerning is future. When the teachers retire, it is actually said that the mental health situation is dire amongst the retirees, amongst different professions, and so in this case, including teachers. What can we do in the present to ensure it is not the case? And then there's the aspect of coping emotionally and the aspect of relationship, for the quality of my relationships in school, out of school, with my family and everything. So this is a tool that I found it very interesting, that by just mapping it out, it can help me see where I am at. And then maybe after that, I need to have a conversation with a peer to say, what is the one or two things that I want to do about my mental health? So I think we really want to convert the talk into the work. We really want to convert the talk into small, practical things that we can do. And already we are signaling that, what we want to do as an organization. But what are some of the things we can bring to our teachers for them themselves to do? Because my health, at the end of the day, somebody says, yes, we can be very good, but we are replaceable eventually. So, Sebabatso, back to you. You had some thoughts about that. I just thought I could share that tool as a simple exercise that maybe our teachers could take time to reflect on different aspects of their well-being and then come up with well-being goals. But Sebabatso, you had some thoughts about practical things that we could begin thinking about putting in place.
Yes, Doc. You already said everything.
Sorry. No, but put it in your own words. I can see them here.
No, basically what I was trying to get at, we are Africans. in Africa, we work in community. Whenever we do anything with support, it relieves some sort of stress and that tension that we may have. So I was thinking that finding community support, it could be within the teacher fraternity, it could be in the communities where people live, but it's getting that support and also having support groups where you can actually have time to talk to other people, see how you can assist each other to whatever challenges that one is going through, because sometimes one has gone through that already. So that can be a way of supporting each other with any challenges that one can come of. I was also thinking having a mental health days. The same way we have sports days for students, we can have mental health days, where's a day we are looking at each other holistically, how we can support each other, how can we be better humans and better educators. What else did I say? Or just when there's meetings, I know the teacher fraternity has meetings, set aside an hour where we're dealing with mental health. It doesn't have to be something external. It could be using the systems that we already have. And that's a way of supporting and actually getting something done and started without having to say, I need to go look for funding to do this. I need to go somewhere for this to have to take place. So we can look at the systems that we already have. So like you were talking, in that chart, you're looking at exercise. If it's a sports day for students, why can we not incorporate that into teachers themselves partaking? And so that's a way of increasing their mental health and endorphins and all of that. And that's giving them something that's positive. So it shouldn't be one-sided. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting that you talk about sports day. And I really like what's going on. Beatrice Amachi, I was just about to call your name, but then just before I did that, you actually sent us this text, which I'm going to read. But just not to lose thought about the very innovative ideas that you've talked about, the issues of community, creating support system. They may already be existing in place, but I think the challenge here to us in the teacher unions and perhaps the NGOs working with teachers, of course, working alongside the government. How can we create more support, community kind of arrangement, a collective approach to looking into this issue on teacher mental health and well-being? What kind of support groups could we put within our schools and within our spaces? I think Lerato already intimated to the fact that they come together 5 schools. How can we make this even more vibrant, dynamic, and stretching perhaps in all schools? But then you came towards, of course, the issues of debriefing, and then the sports. I've kept asking myself this. We have student sports day. What about the teachers? How can we innovatively build sports as an activity that teachers engage in a more structured way? And please, just to mention, this Saturday, we will be having a conversation with a professor from Kenyatta University in Kenya, who is a sports, his area is in sports. And he'll just be talking to us about sports, well-being, and mental health. So if you have time, please look out for that. That will be on EduTalk Africa Radio at 5 p.m. SAT. But I want to read what Beatrice says, because I wanted Beatrice to say something, but then she has actually written something here. But Beatrice says, just thinking for the long term, besides having strategies to deal with teachers' mental health in government policy, this occupational challenge should be introduced and addressed in initial teacher training, as well as in continuing teacher professional development. Very apt. Something to think about. That in addition to that. So Beatrice, your hand is up. Please take it on from there. Dig it a little bit deeper for us. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Beatrice Amati Jenga. I'm an educationist. I'll add an environmental scientist because I had some of you mention environment, and well, I currently work in a small Christian university in Kenya. I really appreciate this initiative and the thoughts that are coming up. I think one of the problems is that we have not even recognized that this is an issue that is to be expected in the normal course of being a teacher. It's to be expected that there are going to be mental challenges as part of our occupational, okay, shall I call it hazard? You know, like counseling psychologists in their training, they deal with their own mental issues, you know, as counselors. And even when they work, every now and again, they have to go through debriefing because of all this take in as they deal with their clients. I think for teachers also that is necessary because of all the stuff that teachers take in, you know, teaching children, you get to know about them, their own issues, their learning challenges and all that. It builds up, and it's necessary to have an outlet. It's necessary to have an organized, formalized debriefing for teachers every now and again, like a regular thing to do, the way it's done with professional counselors. And the whole issue of counseling psychology in our education system is so undervalued, so that even for the children, for the students, I don't think that the government does not include a counselor for schools, but expects schools to be involved in counseling children, and it falls on the teacher to do that without having had any training. So, well, yeah, so just recognizing it and then addressing it the way it's addressed in some other occupations, and making sure that the teacher is aware. Because when you're not aware, when you're teaching and you find that you're, you know, getting overstressed, you think there's something wrong with you. But it's not that there's something wrong with you. You're just human, as you have said. And teachers should have been taught to expect that will happen, and then, you know, empowered on how to deal with it. Sorry, let me stop there.
No. Actually, I want to put you on the spot a little bit more, Beatrice, if you allow me. So I really like what you've talked about, the issue of us thinking about it as a key component of being a teacher, and therefore it being inbuilt, that sense of consciousness, awareness, and it being structured right from the teacher training. Now, I want to push this a little. Of course, we're having a conversation as a continent. And our trust as EduTalk Africa Radio is that we need such spaces for in-depth conversation and opportunity to cross-pollinate and to actually have agendas that we can push as a continent. Now, I'm going to let the lead off. I know that in some years past, you really occupied a very critical position at a continental level. And I know we are thinking about this. We're reflecting on what's going on in Lesotho, what's going on in Ghana, what is going on in Sierra Leone. Is there any opportunity when you're looking at this? How? Because certain things get attention because it is carried up at the higher level. What do you think can be done at a continental level to marshal our governments, our ministries, and stakeholders to bring mental health and well-being of teachers at the level where it should be? What could be done based on your many years of working at that level, at the continental level?
Hello.
Hi, Beatrice, did you hear me?
Yes. Sorry, I'm on the road, so it may be a bit noisy. I must begin by apologizing and confessing that while I was in charge of the education program at the African Union Commission, we were of course concerned about the issue of teachers who wouldn't be. If you're doing education, that is the first, key issue. And so we commissioned a study on the teachers' training, working, and living conditions in Africa. And we had, quite a good study done. I can share the report with you, Herin, afterwards. Unfortunately, mental health did not feature anywhere, and that's my confession. So this is very important, and it can be presented because at the African Union Commission, for instance, the officers, they meet with ministers and policymakers regularly. And they also engage. Okay, I remember I started this. I'm not sure if it's still continuing, but you can find out since you have this important initiative. They used to engage, we used to engage civil society before the meeting with ministers and policymakers so that you get what they're saying, what other people are saying about education to be incorporated in what would be presented to the ministers and therefore reflected in the decisions. So it's possible to engage at that level, just have a well thought out presentation, especially getting stakeholders, the way you're doing this conversation, getting stakeholders input from different countries. I think you mentioned a study. A study would be very helpful if you have some facts and figures so that it can be presented through that structure. So structures do exist, but there's also at the global level Education International that is very active, especially from the side of teachers' unions. And I don't know if any of us here has engaged with them. If not, I can give you a contact of the gentleman who's in charge of the Africa region so that they can begin to deal with it. Because even in working with them, I don't remember ever discussing the issue of mental health of teachers. So it's definitely an idea whose time, though past, but it's better to deal with it now than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. It's great to have you join us and to be able to share your thoughts from your past experience and looking back and actually looking at what's going on now. And definitely I'm going to follow up with you because at the end of the day, we want to curate some of the voices coming out of the threads of conversations going on during this campaign and package it in an accessible way that can send a message loudly to all of us and remind us and all the stakeholders that there's something that we need to do. And there are things that are already going on, and there's space to do better and more in terms of teachers' mental health and well-being. So we are drawing towards a close. I can see Sebabatso actually commenting on what Beatrice was saying, that the education psychology as it is presented, in most cases looks more at the students than the educators themselves. But as she says, most definitely, I agree, it should be structured from the beginning from the teacher training colleges. So there's already action points, gaps. Do we need to review our education psychology units, how we present it? How do we insert and ensure we're not just talking about how the teacher takes care of the student, but also how the teacher takes care of themselves individually and collectively? When you're talking to the principals, what does this mean for them? How aware or conscious are they about this? And just to announce, before I forget, on 24th, we'll be having a special session just for school leaders. What are some of the practical things school leaders could actually do in their schools to better support teachers' mental health and teacher well-being? So right now we are coming towards an end. And so I just would like to ask if you have anything that you want to add to this conversation, please put up your hand. Lerato, could you? I'll just pick on you. Promote values. Please take a deep dive on that, just very briefly. And on that note, Gilbert, please be thinking about your closing reflection points. Of course, we've just scratched on the surface. George, please be doing the same. And I'll be coming to Sebabatso. But if you're in the house and you want to say something, please put up your hand. This is a space to have quick questions and comments. So Lerato, very, very briefly, promote values.
I think that the major cause of depression or mental ills is lack of values in us as people around teachers and teachers themselves. For instance, if we do not cooperate, it will be difficult for us as teachers to have teamwork. Hence, we are not going to be excellent in our work if we are fighting. We should also be accountable for our work, much as we are working under pressure. So those are just the examples. But I think if we can, especially as in Lesotho, if we can stick to the pillars of child-friendly school, that could help somehow to ease the ills we are encountering. Number two, we have to make situation analysis within our school context. Identify what we have, what is it that we have in terms of tangible resources and skills among the teachers and learners and the community at large, and then establish how we can make use of such to make our life easier. So, and in terms of the union, my union is working on the proposal to the government that there be assistant teachers in schools. And we want to categorize this into three: ordinary teachers, and teachers with special skills, like those who can help us with special education, learners with special educational needs, and the support teachers. So this be in proportion to the school role. And then again, the medical aid from the government side. Government should also help teachers with medical aid, because some of the issues that stress teachers are around finances. Thank you.
Wow, practical things that you could do. I really like that assertion about values. And I don't know how to put it, but sometimes they say, I think I recently made a presentation in Tanzania about the teacher program that I was leading in Rwanda. And one of the questions I was asked, how do you make teachers learn from each other, especially the older teachers? Because sometimes I say the teachers can be the most difficult learners, but even more important to this conversation, how do we create an environment that allows us to work closely together, to collaborate, to share the weight, to learn from one another, as Lerato is saying, so that there's less tension in our workspaces. The less tension there is in workspaces, the more stimulating it is. It actually is of good value to our mental health, the sense of emotional location in our environment. We want to walk into a place where I feel excited. I feel a sense of belonging. I feel a sense of support. So I think I don't want to dig into that. You've really actually outlined things that needs to be done, but also things that you are aiming for within Lesotho, and we really will be keeping an eye to keep learning from different countries. George, your last comments in a minute or two, then I'll be coming to Gilbert.
So for me, I just have two things I want us to do, if possible. If we can be able to bring out a document, like a document we'll be able to use, that will help us have how we can outline the things we want to see in different countries, in each of our continents, which we'll be able to use. That one document we'll be able to use in various African countries, though the problems are not the same or the policies are not the same, but it will be a roadmap for us that we can be able to work with and really help the teachers. I was once a student, so that's the matter of fact, I'm so interested in this particular topic. And if we can also, as a continent, find a way we can have a very big program in one of these African countries, I can proudly suggest Sierra Leone, where we will bring people together so we can really discourse and digest on this topic properly to help our teachers. And I believe if we are able to do these two things, it will help each and every country to really move forward. And I want to say thank you to you for bringing up this initiative, because nobody has really thought about this in Africa. When I talk about mental health, I talk about Africa because it is Africa that I stay. That's where I live. So if you are bringing such an initiative, I believe it's a continental problem which is happening everywhere. So we need to really bring all the continent together in one room, talk to them, have this document that this is what we have and this is what we want to see. These are the policies. If they have their policy, we can bring suggestion. We work together with the government and bring out a formidable policy that we protect and help the teachers.
Thank you, George. Quite some big statements there. They are doable because we have the right people in the room. A continental view of this. I mean, this is a jump start, but there are bigger things that could come out of this. Already from the different conversations, there are core statements that we need to pick out and put together for the next level of reflection post the campaign. So that, as you say, there could eventually be some working document, some framework that could help guide the different entities within the countries as they engage with their government, with their teacher union. So I'm taking this, and all of us, let's take this as a point of reflection. We have people like Beatrice in the house who have been working at a continental level, and all of us working in our different spaces. What I see you say is that eventually at the end of this campaign, we should hopefully have a team of people who are interested from different parts of the continent who can come together and now synthesize some of the things that have come out of this and package it with and look at perhaps supportive activities like a study, small scale study, as we ask for bigger scale study. As Beatrice says, if they commissioned a study at the African Union level, which unfortunately did not focus on mental health, by harnessing, putting together some of the things coming out of this, I believe it could easily be used as a rationale to bring entities like African Union to now commission a more in-depth study that can actually bring together and help shape a roadmap at a continental level. And then, of course, this could eventually have something to do with an activity. And just before I forget, I need to mention that we are hoping to have a very small scale activity in Rwanda to close this campaign. And we're calling it a teacher festival. But we're looking forward for the bigger one that will hopefully happen in Sierra Leone in next year or in the next phase. So real great thinkings there. And I think we listen to and reflect on as we go on. Very quickly, George, are you still with us? Not George, Gilbert. Is Gilbert still here? I know he was in class, so he may have dropped out during the session. Okay, anybody else who wants to say something? Tanzania, you have been in the house, TENMET as our host. We thank you very much for hosting us. So I believe we wouldn't end this session without hearing your reflections, what you're hearing as one of the key partners in this campaign. Anybody from TENMET who wants to comment, or from Tanzania who wants to represent TENMET at the end of the day? TENMET? And if you have something to say, I want at least 2 closing statements. So
hello, everybody.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for a very interesting discussion. Actually, it's always a learning to actually discuss these things from people who are actually on the ground and practicing and seeing how mental health is actually extremely important to every sector, especially for us working in the education sector. So I've actually learned so much in the couple of webinars that I've been part of. And unfortunately for today, I've been a little bit out for some bit of time because we're actually preparing for our annual general meeting and people are actually leaving the office for the central Tanzania, where the meeting will actually take place. So thank you so much for actually bringing this space and making this space available. And unfortunately, I think for Tanzania, I think just a couple of people joined. And because I think the wedding got out a bit late, but I think we'll be able to share the recordings, and next time I think I will have lots and lots of participants from this side. So thank you so much. Hello, Seba. It's always great to see you. And
Hi, Kenneth.
looking forward to next spaces. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanzania. Do we have any other country in the house? We've heard from Lesotho, we've heard from Sierra Leone, because I'm joining in from Rwanda. We've heard from Tanzania, we've heard from Kenya through Beatrice Hamati. Do we have any other country in the house? You want to just say something as we close, as you think, as we close and we go home to reflect on the very pertinent points that we have all brought forward and the learnings that we shared from our different countries. Anybody else in the house? I know we were expecting Roy from Malawi. I'm not so sure whether you are in the house. Okay, I think Sebabatso is one of the speakers and she hasn't gotten time to give her parting shot. So Sebabatso, you're going to say the last word. Over to you, Sebabatso.
I'm not going to say much other than there's no health without mental health. And education is the crux of everything. So up until we know how we integrate the health, the education, and just general well-being, because even when we talk about education, we always say there's formal education and there's non-formal education. Everything intertwines into a holistic being. So let's continue to advocate for holistic support of individuals, teachers, students. I will talk of my CSOs, but the African essence has always been mental health, because every African, we always see them smiling and happy. And if we can go back into that, we would have created what we've been advocating for. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go back. Practice smiling, real smiling, and being happy and looking at what it is that could actually make us even be more happy, and aspects of well-being. As I said, we'll be sharing some of, the conversation as it is, some of the tools that we've already come across in our past conversations. For example, we had a session on well-being. There was quite a bit of definitions there and reflections on just practical things teachers could do for their own personal self-care. That has already been uploaded on EduTalk Africa Radio's YouTube channel. And this is going to be also uploaded on 10Met, and EduTalk Africa Radio will try to, sometimes we try to curate it into portions so that it doesn't feel too much. Sometimes if you have a 1 hour recording to listen to, it becomes a little daunting. So what we'll try and do is to perhaps put them into chunks with specific themes around it. And what we'd like to encourage the teachers who are here, those of us who work with teachers, as we say, it begins with conversation. One of the hope can happen during this period is that on those platforms that you are part of that have teachers, WhatsApp groups, in those staff rooms that you're part of, can we, during lunch hour when we're having our meal or when we're just sitting in the staff room, can we instigate, can we catalyze some staff room chats on issues related to mental health and well-being? As you do that, you'll be able to gauge, we'll be able to begin raising awareness. We'll be able to know where perhaps there are misconceptions or areas that needs to be focused on, and you could always feed back some of this information so that when we eventually sit together to put that document that we're talking about, it will not be just technical. It will be very rich with real voices and reflections from different parts of the continent. We truly do not want our teachers pouring from an empty cup. because then there's nothing to pour. We must ensure that they're infilling their cup even as they continue to pour out every day. So I want to say thank you. Thank you very much. As I said, 2 key conversations coming up this Saturday on sports, mental health, and well-being. We'll be discussing that in the context of today's campaign, and part of it will be to try and ask ourselves, how can we make this happen as a systemic thing in our schools, in our countries? And then on 24th, we'll be having a conversation on practical strategies and ideas on how school leaders, education leaders could actually contribute to creating environments in our schools, in our districts, that can better support teachers' mental health and well-being. And then towards the end of around 26th, we will have a conversation on policy and research. Let's continue with the conversations in whatever spaces. As Babata says, there's no health without mental health. And with that, I want to thank you very much. This is Dr. Herin Otieno. If I was on the show, I would be signing out as Africa's own education doctor and education evangelist. Please look out for shows on EduTalk Africa Radio, Africa's #1 online education radio, where we come together to have bold, insightful, and contextually grounded conversations so that we can catalyze actions on issues that are important to us. For example, mental health of our teachers and their well-being. So with that, have a good afternoon, and we will definitely be sharing the link. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking time and being with us. Over
Thank
and
you.
out.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Keep smiling, as Babata says. We are about smiling and being happy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Loretta and everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I have to come to school to learn how to pronounce your names.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for Babata to invite me to Lesotho so that I can experience African winter. She told me about it, and I'm still, I can't wait to experience it. And then I'll be learning the names. And of course, George to Sierra Leone, and all of us to all our countries, to Kenya and to Rwanda. Please come for the festival in December. Bye, over and out.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.